Welcome to the Best of the Godreports podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca, and I'm here with my husband, Sam.
Today, we have a testimony interview with Pastor Scott Phipps from Heidrick, Kentucky. Population of about 1,000.
For over 88 nights in a row, a small country church in Kentucky has been the site of an outpouring of the Holy Spirit, as many are being saved, baptized, and set free from addictions and bondages.
We won't give away much more, so enjoy this recent raw telephone interview with journalist Mark Ellis from 2023.
Where is your church located?
It's in Heidrick, Kentucky, which is Knox County. The county's Knox County, Kentucky. It's not a big county. I guess it's around 30,000, I think, the population of the county. It's a very rural area, not a very mountainous area.
Okay, what would be the closest large city?
The closest large city would be Lexington, Kentucky.
Lexington, okay.
And that's probably about 85 miles. We're dead about center between Knoxville, Tennessee, and Lexington, Kentucky.
Okay.
Both about an hour and a half, south or north.
Okay. So would you say that the revival started with people coming out of drug addiction?
Oh, certainly.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And me and my wife both, we're in our 29th year.
Okay.
Being free from drugs. And,
oh, so you were once an addict yourself?
Oh, yes. Actually, over 29 years ago, I had a little grocery store that I sold groceries in, but also a lot of illegal things. And in the back, I had some illegal poker machines. And a backslidden preacher come in one night, lost all his money in one of the poker machines. And he sold me his car. It's an old Chrysler LeBaron convertible. And I brought it home, and right when the top leaked, he left the Bible there that my wife was in the car looking around and found it. And since it was wet, she called her aunt up that went to church and asked her if she would come get it. And when my wife told her about being wet, her aunt said, I can't come get it today, but if you'll lay it out and turn the pages so they don't mildew, if you can't give it away, I'll come get it. Well, as my wife was drying the Bible out, she started reading it. And from reading it, she started calling her aunt and asking her questions about what she was reading. So that led her aunt into realizing that God was working in her niece's life. So that little church started praying for my wife. And a little few days went by. One night, my wife looked at me and said, honey, I'm going to church one time, so my aunt will leave me alone. And she went that night. And God delivered her of almost 7 years of opiate addiction and saved her. And she come back home and said, honey, God saved me. I don't want to do drugs anymore, and I love you now. And I was like, what? And I just got upset over it. And I ended up, she didn't want drugs. I knew that was her life. And I thought, well, I've always been the leader in her life. And she'd been with me since she was 13. I said, me and this God thing ain't going to work. Well, she didn't choose me, and I knew it was real. So I couldn't sleep. And the next day, I went looking for a church. I thought that must be what I need to do to get what she's got. And I wandered into a Pentecostal church. I stood against the wall, and I went up the altar, and I got down, and I said, God, I need what my wife's got. And when I come up, this little man had his hand on my chest and back, shaking me as hard as he could, going, have you got it, son? Have you got it? I'm like, I've got something. You got to realize, me and my wife had no experience in church. We weren't raised in Christian homes. Her dad had been shot and killed when she was 3 in a bar. It got robbed, and her mother, wasn't that. And I was introduced by my first drugs by my own father. And so we were opposite of, raised that in a Christian home. And so I come home and said, I know what happened. And we ended up leaving everything and getting in the car with our twin boys that were about 1 then, driving to Lexington, Kentucky. We moved in a Super 8 motel, lived there about 2 months, and I got my first real job and at a place called Man of War Ford. And it was a journey for 2 years. And we ended up coming back home, and I started in a little country church that had been empty about 5 years, had a one-his-and-her outhouse, a pot-belly stove in it for heat, and we started there. And I had a little Toyota van that would haul a 7-passenger that I could haul 16 kids in if I sent them just right. And, of course, in Kentucky, I went to 3 haulers, a manual hauler, California hauler, and baby hauler. At that time, they were all gravel roads and never got on blacktop. And then my wife woke up one night and said, honey, we ran out of room in that little church. It hold about 40. She said, God showed me he's going to give us that Pentecostal church downtown and that parsonage. And sure enough, I met 2 Men at Burger King, and they gave us the come out of that like us, and then other people that just, just maybe just didn't know a lot about church, but just kind of lost that first love, and now it's just something I don't think it can ever stop. I think tonight might be the 83rd night. I'm not sure on my timeline on that, and it's just been people just hungry, just really excited. Especially as young people, not necessarily young in age, but young in the Lord, saying, I can't wait till tomorrow night. The worship's just been unbelievable. And a lot of men have preached for the first time that you think had preached their whole life, It's just amazing. God's raising people up really fast, and disciples are being made, and it's just been, God's just been wonderful, and it's just brought a new renewal in my life,
Are you saying that you've met for 83 nights in a row?
Yeah, in a row, yes.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yes, it's wonderful. And I don't think it's going to stop, really. I've got a guy that'll come yesterday that's getting ready to expand the church. So he's going to expand it where it's at about 300 more, and I don't know if I need to start looking for another place. I don't know. Last night, though, I will tell you this. You could feel a shift come in the church. A man was praying for healing, and I mean, we were praying for him, and it's not just because I went numb all over, but it was just you could feel God, just the power of God in such a way, and even the lead evangelist, Billy Joe Hall, looked at me and was like, I don't know, you can feel God's just, at the same time, I think it's just the hour we live in, too. I know it's a dark hour, and it seems like a lot of people have just lost. I guess the difference me and my wife say, when we first got coming over the Lord, I never forget, there was this lady named Sister Dean and Brother Jimmy Lee. There were people that, if you needed to call them at 3 o'clock in the morning, she was probably in her 80s or late 70s. She was there. Me and my wife would talk to her for 4 or 5 hours. There was older brothers in the Lord that you could go to at any hour and time of need that would pray with you. There were house meetings, and it just seems like you look around now, you just don't see that. You just don't see the fellowship. We're blessed to have it. We didn't set out to do it, but somehow we created a community of believers, and people are just coming from everywhere,
Yes.
It's the same. A lot of them are like, I've been waiting on this. I've had pastors, and I had another one just call me from Montgomery, Alabama, and he's like, I'm a pastor. I just want to ask you, how did this start? I've been praying for revival. What was y'all praying for? I'm trying to get my people to pray. We need revival. And then I've had parents. My call started at 7 o'clock this morning from a mother from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My son he went to Teen Challenge. He was doing good for 7 years. Now he's back out in addiction.
Oh.
I'm like, what? I said, we'll pray for him, and I'm like, and I'm blessed. I've got people that'll take off in the middle of the night to Charlotte, North Carolina, to pick somebody up that's struggling on the street in addiction, and just, it's just, we got people. I've been blessed with a group of people that truly, they've learned to be forgiven much, they love much, and they feel they owe their life to Christ, and they're willing to give their life to the Lord. And when you get that people in agreement and working with you, they realize God saved their lives, and they know they can't repent it, but they want to, for Him, they want others. I'll tell you, like, I met John Hatton, one of the preachers, great preached last night. I met him 2.5 years later. He goes into a state prison. He ministers to a young man named Josie Cruz that was a state inmate. He gets out. He comes and joins us. So then a man named Roger Stone from Dayton, Ohio, an ex-biker that was living in a tent, was walking down the road going to rob a dollar store in London, Kentucky. Josie picks him up, takes him and gets him something to eat, shares the love of God with him. Now Roger is going into the detention centers preaching. And I said, it's amazing to watch this over and over from one person that God delivers and saves and shares and fills him with His love. Then he shares it with another. I think I really lost the power of the one-on-one testimony. And when you listen, I tell people it's good to invite somebody to church, but I said take them out to eat, let them share their heart with you, then you share their heart, which is God's heart with them, and see how powerful that is. I mean, God has raised the disciples. I've got so many that what am I going to do with all of them?
That's a good problem.
If you come down right now and say, hey, Scott, I need 10 people right now to go to Nairobi, Africa. I need 10 to go to North Korea. Hands would go up. They go up. I'll go. Send me.
Yes.
But rooted and grounded. They're getting rooted and grounded. I know, and you see them now. They're in detention. Every Monday night, almost every Monday night, they're in the detention centers. They're in federal prisons now. I used to go. Now they go. They are sharing the love of God. It's just, and then now with this, I don't know. I really don't. It's hard to explain. Even me, I'm sitting there the other night, and I'm like, God, I'm just worshiping, and God starts dealing with this, some things you repent of. I'm like, what? And God said, yes. He brings one up, and I'm like, yes. It was some thoughts I had. Another, and he brought it. Yes, 3 in a row. And I wouldn't say, God, check me or, search my heart. And God searched it. And I brought it. He said, now you're ready. And I didn't know if he meant I was ready for worship, which was great, or if I was ready for what was going to happen the next day. That did. But, God brought me in contact with, certain people. And I'm like, God's just, and it's renewed. I know that when Jesus walked in the first church of Revelations, remember, he commends them for the things they're still doing, and they've got faith, and they've labored for his name's sake, and haven't fainted. But he said, yet I've got somewhat against you. You've fallen from that place of love you had for me when I was a sinner of your life.
The first love.
And he tells them, repent and do your first works over. And I realized that's the place I'd come to, even with the prison ministry I had going on, and all the things working. Even though I was carrying on with this, and even with the seeing lives change, I realized that great first love I had. Even though I still love God, that first passionate love, where he was always the last thought when I went to sleep, and the first thought I woke up to. And I'm thankful he is now, and I'm thankful, and that this has done that for me. And I think for some, there's a dentist named Brooke that's a great worker in the church. He looked over at me last night and said, Scott, I think I've forgotten about the seriousness and the urgency of what's going on.
Yes.
And I said, yes, I understand, and that's the way. I always tell people every great awakening I've had, a rude awakening, come first. And it's just been, and it makes you want. You realize, for me, I'm sorry, what's your first name?
Mark.
Mark, I realized for me, here I was, deep in drug addiction and trafficking in drugs, with a store, with a 24-hour game room, and a lot of other illegal activities going on. I realized that I didn't know. I'll never will forget. A Save-A-Lot was next to my 24-hour game room, which was mainly just a lot of pool tables, a lot of card games, but it was open all the time. But on Saturday mornings, this one lady would bring her 8-year-old son in there to play like the arcade games. I never knew why, because she must know what kind of place it was. And I would be in there hungover, and he would play the games. But one day, she picked him up walking out the door. He looked back at me and said, when I grow up, I want to be just like you.
Okay.
And I was probably about 23, 24 at that time. And I remember thinking when he went out the door, thinking, I wouldn't want him to be like me, even though I didn't know nothing about God.
Yeah.
And I knew something let me know I wouldn't want him to be like me. And I realized that night my wife walked in, only went to church, so her aunt would leave her alone. When she walked in and looked at me and said, God saved me, I don't want to do drugs anymore, and I love you now. She didn't quote a scripture to me. She didn't tell me I needed to get right with God. By her saying that, 29 years ago, transformed my life forever. And I realized I was blind, and I look back now, and I didn't know how miserable I was. But I realized that the Bible said when Jesus came into the world, that he brought light in the world. That light was the life of his Father in him. My wife left that night as dark and blind as I was, but when she walked in that night, the life of God was unto me.
That's
I didn't know
fabulous.
it at the time. That's what, so I realized everyone I meet that don't know God, they were just like me. You know, they didn't know there was a better life. They didn't know what they were meant to be. And I got to realize that, you know, no matter what addiction they're in or what style of life they're in or what it may be, if they're bound down by the cures of this life, I was that person.
Yes.
Blinded.
Now, you said you and your wife found the Lord 29 years ago.
Yeah.
How long ago did you plant this church?
We planted the church in 1998.
Okay.
It wasn't long after we found the Lord.
Okay.
And I knew nothing, you know. I started out with that, you know, little church. I had flashcards many times, you know. They have a story where you hold them up and you read off the back, and then, you know, I knew nothing about preaching, but I just started. I knew just, you know, I can't explain it really. And then, of course, when my wife told me we would be getting out of the church, and then from there on, it's just been God. One thing about God's kept opening doors, and it's just been an increase. I've learned truly, if you sow, you will reap in due season. If you faint not, if you sow, you know, if you sow of the Spirit, you'll reap life everlasting. And I realized that God has just been faithful, and I've just strived to trust Him. And I'm still trying to trust Him. I wouldn't no way want to give off that I've come to, you know, I've got it all figured out, or, you know, I'm fully trusting God if I want to, you know.
Yes.
But I'm learning that truly I really know nothing. He knows everything.
Oh, yes. Now, people use the word revival loosely. When did you first recognize something unusual was happening, and what were the marks of that?
Really, when it really, those odds it may be, in the beginning, that the 54th night is when I really realized things was changing. And then it really, and then of course last night, Sunday night. Last night. Yeah, last night, which I'm not sure might have been 82nd night. I'm not sure anymore. But that's what I really felt. You know, the power of God. Even Billy Joe. Now, Billy Joe's been serving the Lord for quite a few years. He's from Jackson, wonderful young man in the Lord. Compared to me, I'm getting returned 58. I think Billy Joe's about 44. And it's just the power of the Lord was so strong last night. I mean, compared to all the nights. And I don't know if it was because of the man having that had leukemia. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure what it was. But it was just, you felt it. It was just, man, just, you know. It was overtaking, you know.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, it's
people talk about, and in fact, I was just looking at a book called Joy Unspeakable. Would you say that's a characteristic?
Yes, most definitely. And seeing all the, you know, I'm probably, I'm probably about 58. I'm about 58. But probably, there's probably maybe 5 people in the church that's older than me.
Okay.
I would say the average age in the church is about 35. Average, yeah. So in the 30s. And you see these people, a lot of them that really never knew nothing about the Lord, coming to know the Lord. And of course, some of them, you know, in really a worship, you know, a pure worship, if I can put it that way, a real. You know, it's hard to get the service back from them, you know, for preaching. I'm not. They go in 2 or 3 hours, you know, you wouldn't get it back. So, you know.
Now, how many were at your gathering last night, would you say?
I'm saying, our church would hold. Now, we're in the Appalachian of Kentucky, you know, Hills, Kentucky. So
yes.
Our church will hold a little over 300.
Okay.
And it's full.
Yeah.
So, and like, you know, and I think, you know, a Sunday, I baptized 9 more.
Yes.
I think that's 26 so far through the revival. And it's just but I think if you met them and heard the stories of many of them, you know, life support 9 days, some longer, human trafficking, you know, children that you thought they'd never see again, God's restored, families, hepatitis C completely gone, no medicine, more, you know, just you see, just God delivering and just putting lives together. That's to me the most beautiful miracle, the greatest miracle is how God takes a mother that drugs and was not taking care of the children. It's like a lot of people say, I would die for Christ, but yet they won't live for him. We're living for him would be much harder than dying for him. But you see a mother that brings their child back to me. First, they don't know how to react because they're full of so much guilt. But you see this child that loves their mother as if she's been there the whole time, and now you see this mother that is doing what she's meant to be, raising this child, and it's just hard to put into words, you know.
Yes.
It's just God just restoring, and you know, and then families, and it's just, you know, it's, you know, and people that had no hope, that thought this is the best their life is going to be, you know, and God just brings them, and they're so shocked, a lot of them, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, they didn't know there's a life like, you know, a life like this. That God loved them. That, you know, as I tell people, we could take an old piece of furniture and we could restore it, make it something look nice. But God can take ashes, a life that the world say there's nothing, no hope for them, there's nothing left. And God can take ashes and make something beautiful out of it. Only God can do that.
I love it. Now, are the same people coming back every night?
Oh yeah, yeah, and then so every night, yeah. You know, it's funny. A while ago, we were getting ready to leave, and a man comes wandering because we've left this other church. This man, kind of tall, slim man, real nice. He comes wandering down beside the house, and I'm like, "Where's that guy going?" So then he was from Lexington, Kentucky, and he's like, "I meet him super nice." I said, "Well, was you coming? Are you down here visiting?" And I'm looking for the revival. He was a missionary to South Korea. No, Vietnam. Yeah, thanks, man. Vietnam. He said, "I'm just chasing, looking where God's looking." And I can tell with texts I'm getting and calls are saying, "Where's a good motel around there?" You know, we've been looking. So I think probably about the next week, I think we're going to see people just, as I can tell, they're making plans to come, and I don't know where we're going to put them, but I can tell they're coming, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so thrilled to hear what God is doing in your midst, and pray it will just continue to grow and bring transformation into people's lives.
So I'm thankful for that, yes.
My prayer is it sweeps the whole country and the world.
Yeah. Well, you know, I will say this, for all the ladies for that work in recovery to come out, they have prayer every morning. What time y'all used to pray? About 8 to 9 or 8 to 9 for an hour every morning. And the men, which they gather, probably about 50 roughly, that gather every morning for prayer about the same time. They're about 13 miles apart. And then the ladies again pray. Of course, we've been in revival. They pray in the evening. So, you know, prayer has definitely been the key to, and that seems to be like when people call me, ask what's going on, they're like, I'm trying to get my people to pray, you know, and try. And I think that's another thing. I think prayer, you know, a lot of people pray, I believe, like they're leaving God a message on the answering machine. And not realizing that God is moved by, you know, God's moved by prayer, you know.
Yes.
Remember in the Old Testament, God tells the children of Israel what he's going to do ahead of time. Then he says, but I first must be inquired for these things. You know, there's nothing about prayer that shows if we believe God. And I think that's the thing. You get people praying. I will say this, the altars are full every night. 2, 3 deep. I mean, that's the thing. And, you know, you hear those that come up for prayer, they're almost always the same. If they're not praying for a family member, they're like, I know God in a greater way. I want to serve him. I don't want to fail him. I want to, you know, and I think that hunger, and of course we know if you hunger and thirst after righteousness, we will be filled with. So if we're hungry and thirsting for right standing with God, well, that's what God wants, you know, and for us to believe him, you know, and to trust him. That's what we know God is looking for. People to believe him and trust him, and then he can take those. That really believes he can do more than we can think or ask, abundantly more.
Yes.
That's, you know, just talking to you, I mean, you know, just talking to you right now is encouraging me.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, this is exciting. And did you say you had an offer for a bigger facility?
I'm looking. I don't know what I'm going to do on that. I've got one. We've got a great lot of men in our church that do a lot of things. So we could start. We're thinking about starting, well, at least right now, where we think we can, within about a couple of weeks, we could add on enough room to probably seat another 300 to 400.
Okay.
And then we may start looking. I don't know. I really don't have really much of an idea because we're having service every day. So
yes, that's what's so amazing to me is that that this is sustained every night.
I know it.
And that doesn't happen in human terms. It can only be a move of God that could do that.
I know one of the local, it's one of Kentucky's main stations, WYNT. They called and she surprised me. She said, "Well, I'm going to be there in the morning." I'm like, "Okay, this was Sunday morning now." So one of the top 3 stations in Kentucky came and filmed our service. It's a regular news outlet. Filmed our service, and she looked at me before she left. She said, "I'm afraid I can't do this justice." And she said, "They've given me a minute and a half. I think I can push it to 2 minutes." And she did a great job. But when the 11 o'clock news, I'm sitting looking at the 11 o'clock news thinking, are we all 11 o'clock news? And of course, that's no doubt, that's a very popular for Kentucky. So a lot of people's watch that now. So, and I just don't know what it's untelling,
Yes. Have you read very much about the history of revivals?
No, I really haven't. I need to do that.
Yes. Okay. Well, it would be interesting.
More to start with?
It would be interesting. Well, the Welsh revival in the early 1900s is noteworthy, along with the Azusa Street revival here in California. There was a revival in the Scottish Hebrides Islands, I think a little bit after that. But, there have been revivals throughout church history, and it would be interesting for you to know more and compare perhaps just what you see God doing. But
yes, I will do that. I appreciate that. I will do that.
Yeah. Because you're in the center of it, and it makes those of us who are a long way away envious in a way, wanting to be with you and to be part of what God is doing.
Yes, you definitely keep us in your prayers. We definitely covet your prayers.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's so good to talk to you, Pastor, and I just pray that God will continue to supply the wind of the Spirit under your sails and
thank you.
Yeah, propel this further, and I'm hoping it spreads.
Thank you so much for listening to this interview. For more information, go to Godreports.com.